We are back from the Dean E. Smith Center in Chapel Hill. This is TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff Chelsea Sipple. This is THI publisher Andrew Jones. And we're here with another three things to talk about Carolina's 85-64 win against Wake Forest. So, AJ, tonight, Carolina came out with a much bigger win than predicted, but RJ Davis also had a career high 36 points tonight.
36.
36 points, and he's hit 30 twice before in Battle for Atlantis against Arkansas, and also a while back in the tournament. So let's just talk about this huge win for the Tar Heels, and also this big night for RJ.
Yeah, he had 30 against Baylor in that crazy second round NCAA tournament game when Brady got thrown out and Carolina had a huge lead and Baylor came storming back, and RJ was he showed us that night a lot of what we saw tonight, and we've seen a lot this year. And then against Arkansas in the Bahamas back in November, he did the same thing. That was the second game of that when he started that 20-point streak that he was on. But I'll tell you, he is the by far the runaway leader for ACC Player of the Year right now. He is having an incredible year. He's having the kind of year that when you look back at his career, and we'll start doing that as we get closer to the end of the season, you start putting him up there in some pretty impressive company because this is his team. Armando we've talked about this before, Armando has kind of stepped aside, said, RJ, take it. Very much like what Tyler Hansbrough did with Ty Lawson in 2009. And it was an important thing that Tyler did then. It's very important that Armando has done this now. And to think that they beat Wake by 21 points when Armando scored 5 points, they were both tip-ins, shows you how good this team is and how incredible RJ's night was. And I've only seen a few guys in this league kind of do what he did tonight. I know fans are going to hate me for saying this, but the older ones know who I've covered. I've done this for 27 years. I talked to a couple older reporters, some of the guys have been around, and we all agreed this was JJ Redick stuff. JJ was so good at doing that. It was almost like when RJ scored tonight, whether it was a floater in the lane or at the rim or a three, it's like it had more value than just those points. And JJ used to do that. There was a couple times when, like Luke May at NC State in 2018 was like that. When he scored that year in that game, it was like they were more valuable than that. When the next year at Duke, the Zion Williamson shoe game, Luke went for 32, and it was the same kind of thing. So when RJ started going, it's like he put the team on his shoulders. And I asked him about that after the game. He said, no, he didn't really do that. He's just shooting what's there. And it was there. And he kind of got it going in the first half, Chelsea. Tar Heels were sluggish early. Six of the first 10 shots were threes. And then 18 of the last 20 shots in the first half were not threes, and most of them were shots in the lane. And RJ started seeing those lanes. He took them, got to the basket. It opened up for other guys. Elliot Cadeau had a bunch of those buckets. Cormac got him there a couple of times. And then they had some draw dishes for scores as well. I mean, this was an RJ Davis, put it in a time capsule, let people 30 years from now watch it. And when they talk about a great North Carolina player in 30 years, they could say, man, there was this guy named RJ Davis that used to do stuff like this sometimes. And I think tonight was his signature night. He is easily the front runner for ACC Player of the Year. And it's not just because tonight he's been outstanding all year, and he's been an absolute guarantee. His low games since the Bahamas are 15 and 16 points. He may have had 14 and more. Okay, and they still won those games, right? I mean, they're winning if he scores 36. They're winning if he scores 14, but he knows if he needs to get to 36. When he got to 28 today, I'm thinking, oh, he's going to blow past his record.
Yeah.
And he said he knew. Here's the cool thing, and I think this is what's fun about this group, is he knew he had 30. A lot of times guys, they lose themselves in the game they don't know. Now, they did show it on the board, but these guys only look at the board usually. Sometimes after a foul call, they'll look at the replay, or they'll look at the score coming out of a timeout or something like that, or during a free throw. But he knew it, and Elliot Cadeau knew it. And Elliot said, I asked him about RJ, and in his response, he said, well, I knew he had it, and I want him. I said, you got to get 2 more. You got to get 32. They wanted him to get the record, or his career high. And I asked Hubert, I started to ask him if he knew, and he jumped in and said, I didn't know. Because I told him, I said, RJ knew he had 30. Elliott knew he had 30. The question was, how healthy is it for this team when your freshman point guard, the reclass kid, knows that the 4-year, the senior guy, the stud, is tied a career high and needs another bucket to set a career high. And he said that totally illustrates what this team's all about. They're in tune with one another. They know that, and they celebrate others' success. Armando was thoroughly excited out there, and he had 5 points. And that's what this team's all about. So RJ can score 36, and it's not a look at me 36. It's A, we needed the 36 or a lot of the 36. B, it came through the offense. He wasn't trigger happy out there. He shot a lot, but the shots were there. And the other thing is his teammates were perfectly happy with it. They were so happy for him. You asked the guys after the game, Chelsea, you were talking to some of the players too. Mm-hmm. Every one of them said, we see it every day in practice. That's who he is. We love RJ doing that because we win games. So it was the RJ Davis show, but it was the North Carolina show with the rest of the Tar Heels saying, RJ, we're rolling out this big baby blue carpet and we want you to do your thing. And he did, and they got a big win.
Absolutely. And I want to drop this statistic that I think really shows, his scoring all across. Tonight he had 6 floaters, 4 layups, 4 threes, and 6 baskets driving down to the bucket. I mean, we've got scoring all over the court from RJ. And another statistic.
And by the way, real fast.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell me what that stacks. I'll see if you tell the one that I have on my mind. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to talk about how this leeway into what we're going to talk about with the second half. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wake had 9 field goals in the second half. RJ himself had 8. Yeah. So, I mean, just look at that scoring comparison.
Well, you nailed it. You're on top of it there, and you're 100% right. What it does is it's the dichotomy. It's the game itself. Mm-hmm. It's the second half. As awesome as RJ was, Carolina was that good defensively. And you were in Steve Forbes' press conference, the Wake Forest coach, and he said that Carolina is an elite, quote, elite defensive team. And he made sure to note to the media in there that Carolina's efficiency rating on defense is higher than it is on offense for the season. He said they are elite. So that's coming from a guy whose offense is one of the best offenses in college basketball. They usually don't have problems scoring, but they finished with, they have 65. So they finished with 32 points in the second half. But let's face it, when I think there was 3.5 minutes left, they had 23 points in the second half. So they scored 9 minutes once the game had already been, or 9 points once the game had already been decided, and they were struggling big time. I was started tracking it when RJ had 6 baskets and they had 7, ended up 8, 9. It was kind of a fun thing to tweet out. Got a lot of traction on Twitter.
Yeah,
those things get traction on Twitter. But the Tar Heels were outstanding defensively. They did not let Wake get a lot of the stuff it got. Now Wake helped them some, but Wake has a tendency at shooting some questionable shots early in offensive sets sometimes, and the Deacons did that. But for the most part in the second half, it was Carolina. Carolina didn't let them run a lot of their stuff. They call it their actions. They couldn't run their actions. Mm-hmm. Where was Andrew Carr tonight? I thought Carolina's biggest matchup issue would be Andrew Carr. I don't know what the final stats were with him. I think we got a stat sheet right here.
Oh, perfect.
No, that's a halftime stat sheet. Okay. I'm not sure what he had. I could look it up. Obviously, I will after the game, after we do this, when I grind out 500,000 content items.
But, we'll have all the stats then.
But he was. I wouldn't say he was invisible, but he wasn't very visible. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for Hunter Salas doing some good things, he played a really good game. He was a guy that Carolina recruited real hard a few years ago. Wake would have lost this thing by 30 or more. And what's crazy, Chelsea, is the Tar Heels weren't great tonight. They had on. It's going to look when the score scrolls by to some guy sitting in Idaho. Yeah. Boy, that was a great game by North Carolina, but they weren't great tonight. There were a lot of things they did kind of okay. It was RJ was great, and he carried them, and then they kind of routed around that, and they fed off of him, and a lot of the other guys got involved, and it was a very fluid game for a team in which a guy scores 36, and on the other end of the court, they're locking down. So we keep asking, when are they going to play a game when they're on fire on one end and they're locking down on the other end? And we saw stretches of that in the second half tonight. And we've seen it at times. It's going to come, and it's going to come for a longer period of time in the game because I think this team's getting better. And we saw tonight, for a lot of the people who continue to take the form of naysayers with respect to this team defensively, and even Hubert Davis. I don't know how they're gonna naysay on this one. I don't know how they're gonna be Debbie Downer on this one, because
Mm.
I've been outlining the 3-point shooting defense. I've been outlining a bunch of these different things. No teams not getting opponents not getting fast break points and all that stuff. And there's people out there that are saying, well, look who they're playing. Teams are just missing wide open shots. And I say, you know what? There are two kinds of wide open shots. There's a wide open shot that you get by design, and it's comfortable and it's rhythm. And there's a wide open shot that you get that's not thoroughly by design. That's not because of fluidity. It's because you get a ball and suddenly you're open.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of wide open shots more often than not opposing teams have been getting against the Tar Heels. And that's why they get credit for forcing a lot of misses. It's not just a 1 or 2 game thing. This has been going on now, with the exception of, I guess, Louisville had a pretty decent game from the perimeter. It's been going on now for almost a month. So I think it's fair to say right now, this is who they are. This on the defensive end of the floor. They're very good defensively. And Armando's having a great year defensively. He was really good tonight. I know he didn't have the stat line, and people are going to dog him for it, but you got to look at the whole of the game. And I know we're talking about defense here, but I must throw this Steve Forbes quote in about Armando too. Gosh, what was it? I'm going to look it up on Twitter because I did tweet it out, I think.
No,
Do you
yeah,
remember
let's
what the
pull it
quote
up.
was?
I don't, but I saw it up on my Twitter.
I'm going to paraphrase. I don't want to look too long. I'm going to paraphrase. He called him a badass screener.
Uh-huh.
So Armando doing his thing, and they win by 21 when he has 5, but RJ goes crazy, and they defend like you know what. And on a night where it didn't look like they had all the gears going early, or really for the first half, they win an ACC game against a team a lot of people thought were going to beat them tonight by 21 points. That's an impressive thing.
Absolutely. Well, AJ, we've covered RJ's 36-point game. We've talked about the defensive push in the second half. What does this mean for Carolina basketball moving forward?
They're awfully good, and they're getting
better.
I like that. They're awfully good, and they're getting better. And they're trending. If you're awfully good and getting better, that means you're trending.
It's only upward.
There's at some point, there are other words we can use to describe them. They're going to have to do something significant in March in order to be that. But everything's lining up for this group. The bench gives them what the bench needs to give them. Some nights the bench doesn't have to give them a ton. Like tonight, they didn't have to give him a ton, but I thought Jalen Withers gave him a nice lift in the first half because they weren't very good in the first half. And he got the line, hit some free throws, and just kind of the energy and grit that he plays with. I thought Trimble gave them a huge lift defensively in the first half tonight because they were struggling. Carolina's got 2 short guards, and Wake's a team with Hildreth and Salas and Boopy. They could take advantage of that, and that's going to be a question for this team going to the NCAA tournament. But what's a beautiful thing about how they've developed through 19 games is Hubert is he's not afraid to pull the trigger and put Trimble in there and take Elliot Cadeau out. He's not worried about Elliot's confidence. He's not worried about how it affects him if he's on the bench for a long period of time because they need a little bit more defense out there with Seth, need a little bit more size, a little bit more fearlessness, which he bring. Elliot's fearless, but Seth, because he's a bigger body and maybe could do more things on the defensive end than Seth, just adds that layer to the team. And it really kind of spreads to the other guys. Withers did that defensively in the first half today too. But this is a club that they know each other so well. And they feel each other so well, and they're so connected, and there's a tremendous amount of spirit and joy that they get in other guys doing good things, because I think they've reached a point as a group that, okay, that guy's going off now. If they're concerned at all about their own numbers, they know that their opportunities are going to come. Mm-hmm. If I set my screen and I roll, if I pop out properly, if I run this stuff the way I'm supposed to run it, everything, it's going to come back to me. It's all going to come back. There's all kind of payoff down the road, whether it's this game or another game, it's going to happen. And they go to the winner's circle. This is 9 straight wins. They're 8-0 in the ACC. There's only twice now since 2001, Carolina started out 8-0 in the ACC. This is the second time. The other time was 2016. They got to the national championship and lost on a buzzer beater. So one of the other things about this, Chelsea, is when I start doing my tidbits after the game, which people should read because there's a lot of number crunching that goes in there, and it's all very relevant. When I start connecting things that they're doing now to the past, 2009, 2008, 2016, 2017 are popping up a lot. They're popping up a lot. Well, what happened in 2008? They went 37-3 and they went to the Final Four. What happened in 2009? I think the last great college basketball team, in my opinion. It would have been Kentucky if they would have won it back in 15, but they didn't.
Yeah.
That team won the national title, double figures across the board in all their NCAA tournament games. 16 loses the title game with the buzzer. They get redemption the next year, they win it. That's what we're starting to connect this group to. Now, it's way too early to start saying they're that team.
Mm-hmm.
But they have all the trimmings of becoming that team. They still got to get better in some areas. I still think they need another guy that can just give you 20. Someone else has to go for 20 other than Armando. Harrison or Cormac, one of those guys has to do that a couple of times because they might need that in a Sweet 16 or a regional final if RJ's in foul trouble or off and Armando's in foul trouble. They need to know that someone else can get them a shot and they're going to bury it. That's still to come, and they still have 12 more ACC games and then the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
But everything is trending in the right direction, Chelsea. They were dominant on the glass again today. They had a 1 rebound edge at halftime. They out-rebounded Wake by 12 in the second half. I mean, they're doing this all the time. On Saturday at Boston College, they out-rebounded BC 15-4 over the last 12 minutes. They play well. They do put themselves in position to win games, and then they get to a point in the game where they just say, boom, and they go. It doesn't always lead to 20-point wins, but it leads to wins in which the last possession of the game doesn't matter. Game's already in the books. They're 8-0 in the league. This is 9 straight wins, all of them by double figures. At some point, people have to start acknowledging. I'll close on this. I know I'm going super long-winded, but you've been around long enough now. You're familiar with AJ going long-winded, because a lot of times I'm just kind of sorting through my thoughts. But I think we've seen enough now. We've seen enough now to know that this isn't just a typical Carolina team. I think they have a chance to be a club that hangs a little bit of laundry up here and does some very significant things. They're in position to do that. Will they? We'll see. I think they can get better. Their coach is doing a great job. Hubert is doing an awesome job right now. I told Bryant Balcom, who was sitting next to me tonight, there was a timeout, like a 12-minute mark or something like that, or 8-minute mark. And Carolina they looked like they were playing with ankle weights on a little bit. And I said, he's going to go full court press of some kind here, just to kind of give him juice. And they had a full court press. It wasn't a diamond or anything like that. It was take your man, just full court pressure, if you will. Yeah. It wasn't so much a press. It was just full court pressure. And it worked. And they went right into an 8-0 run or 10-0 run. I think that was when it was 14-12, and they reeled off that 10-0 run, took a 22-14 lead, and that kind of injected them with some good venom, the good stuff, and they played with a little more skip in their step the rest of the way. So Hubert routinely makes the right calls, makes the right decisions with this team, the right substitutions, calls the right plays, lets them go freelance more. Last year I probably annoyed the hell out of people constantly talking about set play, set play, set play. Everybody knows what they're going to run. Not doing that now. Hubert Davis has done an A+ job. And as much as RJ is the front runner for ACC Player of the Year, Hubert has to be the front runner for ACC Coach of the Year. And it has to be in the conversation for National Coach of the Year.
I like that. Well, we'll close out on that. I mean, what a fun game to watch. Again, Carolina win over Wake Forest, 85-64. I'm Chelsea Sipple. This is AJ Jones. If you guys like what we do, if you guys like the content, the Carolina coverage, go ahead and subscribe to TarHeelIllustrated.com. We've got the website. We've got the YouTube. We're also on Twitter. But yeah, thanks again for another great 3 things, AJ.
Thanks.